At this time, I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest speaker for our AGM. Our guest speaker today is Mr. Patrick Tannock. He serves as the Chief Executive Officer of AXA Bermuda XLB Insurance Operations and is an AXA XL partner. Mr. Tannock is responsible for strategic direction, underwriting profitability, and leadership of AXA XL's Bermuda's insurance operation. He is also president of the AXA Foundation, the company's philanthropic unit. Mr. Tannock has more than 30 years of experience in the international insurance and reinsurance industry. Mr. Tannock is currently chairman of the Association of Bermuda International Companies. He was appointed to this position in January 2015. He is vice chairman on Bermuda First and is a member of the executive committee. He is also a member of the Bermuda Government Economic Advisory Committee and is a founding member of the Financial Intelligence Agency Board. Mr. Tannock is the recipient of the 2015 Community Service Award by Epsilon Theta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and the Salute to Service Award from the Bermuda Health Foundation. In February 2017, he was inducted as an honorary fellow of the Bermuda College. Mr. Tannock is a regular participant and speaker at professional and educational conferences and panel discussions. Mr. Tannock has been married to Shakita for 27 years, and they have two sons, Matari and Kumari. Without further ado, I introduce to you Mr. Tannock.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone can see me properly.
Yes.
It's a real, Well, it's a real privilege to be here this afternoon and to be invited to speak. But before I get started, I just want to share with you guys how I got here today. I was in my office about 2 weeks ago and I got a call from Martha Dismont. And anyone who knows Martha, when Martha calls, basically no is not an option to anything that she's asking, even if you don't know what she's asking. And so you immediately go to the triple W's, which are where, when, and what time. So without further ado, she introduced me to Dr. Thomas, Tiffany, and we had a good conversation in terms of what she wanted me to talk about and what her purpose and her vision was for this organization, Transitional Community Services. And I became even more enamored and thrilled that I was being asked to speak at this event. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going to break it down into 3 areas. I'm going to talk about my journey to date, which is a journey of resilience. And I'm also going to talk about some of the lessons that we've learned in terms of how to raise successful Black men that I've learned over the time. And then I'm going to close by just giving some takeaways that I want to share, not just with the young men, but also with some of the donors who I understand are on the telephone today. So without further ado, someone might be questioning why they would ask someone like me, a CEO, to actually be a participant in this. And to me, the reason's very, very simple. I'm a Black man before I'm anything else. And I've always been a Black man, and I've never tried to hide who I am as a person. And my story is definitely a story of resilience. And I'll start with the fact that I grew up in the 60s in a very segregated Bermuda. I lived over Cedar Hill. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And my mother was very, very busy. And by the time I reached 5 years old, I think my mother had like 3 kids who were all under the age of 5. So she was a little busy. So unfortunately, when it came to registering me in the school that was in my district, which was Purvis School, they were full. So she actually reached out to Hearn Bay, and Hearn Bay was also full. So she decided that she would try Port Royal. And you got to understand that back in the 60s, Port Royal was segregated. There were no Black kids at the school at all. And all of us who have mothers know that most mothers have, 2 distinct two distinct personalities. One when they're talking on the phone and one when they're talking to everyone else. I've seen my mother, bless her soul, she passed away about a month ago. So, I'm still grieving, but I've seen my mother go from put that thing over there, boy, to when the telephone rings, good afternoon, Tannock's residence, how may I help you? So anyway, what happened was that she called the headmaster up at Port Royal and, he said, what's your name? And she said, Patrick Tannock. And Tannock apparently is a Scottish name. And so the headmaster at the time was actually Scottish. And so believe it or not, he accepted us over the telephone. And my mother said that, when she showed up at the school, to see the look on this man's face when she came there for a little Black boy was absolutely priceless. But I share this story with you because living in a Black neighborhood and going to a white school and being one of the first people of color to actually go to that school, it was very difficult. You know, you got ostracized by the black kids because you were, you know, living in a black neighborhood and going to a white school, and the white kids didn't want to have anything to do with you either. So talk about, you know, having to dig deep and really trying to find your way and not getting lost in the shuffle. It was very, very challenging. But, you know, I survived and actually thrived. And, you know, I was very good academically and I was very good in sports as well. And I learned a lot about people. I learned that people are people. And some of those skill sets that I picked up have been instrumental in terms of where I am today. So did well at Port Royal, took the 11 plus exam, and I thought that, you know, I would go to Berkeley because that's where I got accepted. But I had also taken the exam to get into Saltus, and I got a scholarship to go there. So my mother said to me, you know, I told her I wanted to go to Berkeley, but, you know, she ruled and her and my father ruled. So she basically said to me that, guess what? You know, why don't you try Saltus out for a semester? If you don't like it, you know, maybe you can transfer to Berkeley. So I go to Saltus and lo and behold, I get there and I find that there's no girls. And so I was kind of stunned with that. And so I go home and I said to my mom, I said, hey, Mom, there's no girls in the school. Like, you know, what's the deal with that? She says, well, maybe they'll come tomorrow. And she knew damn well there were no girls coming tomorrow. So then what happened was that I didn't do anything the first semester because I thought that if I didn't do anything, you know, I was going to get into Berkeley and I could just kind of, you know, satisfy my mom's requirements that I do one semester. So I did nothing, you know, I didn't do anything in school and I actually finished last in class. So at the end of the semester, I go home and I say to my mom, I said, I guess I can go to Berkeley now. And she says, no, you know, you can't go to Berkeley. And I got to tell you, this is the last time I actually remember crying where I was just feeling, I said, Mom, I said, everybody thinks I'm dumb now. So she says, well, you go back and you show them just, you know, what you're all about. And so the rest is history. I actually did very well. I went from last in class to first in class in one semester. And I learned a lot. You know, I was exposed to people that I wouldn't normally be exposed to. And it was an interesting experience in terms of, you know, just being who I am and defining who I am as a person. So I left Saltus and I went up to Bermuda College. I couldn't wait to get out of Saltus, to be honest. I'm not nothing against the school. I'm sure it's probably different now, but I just wanted to be around, you know, boys and girls and just have a normal kind of experience. So I went up to Bermuda College and, you know, had a pretty interesting semester. And, you know, it was the first time in my life that I had so much freedom and I really wasn't ready for it. You know, I wasn't ready for, you know, people not checking on my work and making sure that I was doing what I was supposed to do. And, you know, so I didn't do much. I actually went to class a few times, did very well in some of the exams, but was very disruptive. And, you know, they were on the verge of kicking me out of the school. And this is where the village really helps to raise the children. Some of the older guys at the college actually, you know, got together and read me the riot act because I was going nowhere fast but in the wrong direction. And, you know, they believed in me. And, you know, I was always relatively intelligent, but, you know, I had a bad attitude and I just thought I knew everything. And I thought I was the smartest guy in the room and so on and so on. So, you know, they humbled me and basically told me like, you know, you got to go to class, you got to humble yourself. And but for that intervention, you know, I could have gone on a very different path. So, you know, so this whole, you know, issue of transitional community services, the values, the purpose of that really resonates with me. So I left Bermuda College, did very well eventually, and managed to get a scholarship to go away to the University of Hartford. And I took up insurance and finance and did really well over there. You know, got a lot of academic accolades and, you know, met a lot of people and, you know, was very well positioned. And while I was there, I actually became the president of the African American Student Association. And we brought people in like Andrew Young, who was the first Black ambassador to the United Nations. And, you know, we had a budget of $40,000, which, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s, that was a lot of money. And I thought that, you know, having that kind of experience would put me in good shape for potentially getting a job when I came back. Unfortunately, when I came back, you know, I was unable to get a job down here because, you know, at that time, and, you know, in some cases, people might still make the case that Bermuda, people who looked like me, who came from my kind of background, they didn't even believe we had the aptitude to participate in international business. So, you know, I ended up pounding the pavement for quite a while. I didn't come from a very wealthy family. I came from a blue collar family, and it was no going to Europe to go find yourself. So basically, it was told like, hey, you got to get a job. And so I took a job, and the only job that was available was a job working out at the hospital. And so I took a job at the hospital after getting a degree and after doing really well with all kinds of academic accolades and scholarships and whatnot. I took a job mopping up floors down the hospital as a janitor. And I got to tell you, not that it was humbling, it was a really interesting experience, but I learned a lot while I was there. The first thing I learned is that obviously you don't get your dream job right away. You got to persevere. And, I kept studying the whole time I was at the hospital. The second thing I learned was that, you know, the way people treated me because I had because I had a brown uniform on, I made a vow that I would never treat people the way I was treated when I was down there. And I would treat everybody equally and treat people with respect. And, when I was down there, I eventually got promoted to become a supervisor after a relatively short period of time. And I had to get people to work together, people from very different backgrounds, people who were like me, who were probably going to be there until they found something else, older people, younger people, people who were educated, Black people, white people, and we had to get the hospital to a high standard of cleanliness. And some of the skill sets that I picked up while I was there have been very invaluable in terms of my journey to date, in terms of journey to leadership. I had to get people to work together, and soft skills were very, very critical at that time. The other thing that I learned while I was down there was that, I kept studying. I kept, enhancing my skill sets to make sure that they were relevant and current. I kept taking exams, and I refused to give up. And I made sure that I did not have 1 ounce of negativity at all. There's an old saying that, show me someone who's successful, and they'll tell you that they're successful because they're optimistic, as opposed to being optimistic because they're successful. No one is attracted to negativity. And, I had every reason to be negative because I would walk around town sometimes while I was doing these job searches, and I'd see some of these young men, white men, who didn't have half the qualifications that I had, and they were gainfully employed. And I think part of it was probably because I had the fact that I was president of the African American Student Association, and maybe they thought I was going to be a rabble rouser. I don't know. I looked at it in terms of that showed that I had really good experience and some administrative skill sets in addition to my academic qualifications. So I stayed on the hospital for a while, for a couple of years, about a year or two, and I eventually did get a job in international business. And, my career really did take off. But I got to tell you that, as a Black man in this industry, it hasn't been easy. Some of our, our people think that it's been a walk in the park, but I've never had a union representing me when I've been discriminated against, or when, I've been held to a higher standard than other people. But I kept going and I kept persevering. And I made sure that, I would learn the technical aspects of the business, and that I would always be, very positive. But I never, ever tried to hide who I was, because, I think it's a lot easier to be authentic and to be who you are. And maybe it's taken me a little bit longer to get to the top than it might have been if I had done other things. Like, for instance, I've never been on the golf course. I don't golf. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. And, nothing against it. I think, people have to do what they have to do. But I've had to really dig deep. There's been several times when I've been the senior person in a meeting, and, everybody thinks someone else is the senior person until I open up my mouth, and then all of a sudden, things change. And I can't tell you how many times, when I've been invited to dinner, and, they keep shifting the location of the dinner because they didn't really want to have dinner with me. And I could go on and on about the amount of times when people have come down here and actually seen me, and, they don't know if they're talking to a Black guy or a white guy. And when they see you, it's like, they switch up. And I'm not sure sometimes, maybe now I know, but back then when I was in my 20s, maybe it was because I was young, but I think maybe it was because I had a different complexion. But that's okay. My attitude was like, that's your loss, not my loss. And, the story goes on in terms of, some of the things that I had to endure, to get to the top. And, there still isn't a level playing field, but, we're making inroads. And I believe that, we have an opportunity in Bermuda to lead the world when it comes to diversity, in terms of what it can do to really move a company forward. And, I mentor several young men, some not so young, sponsored quite a few, and very proud of, what we've been able to accomplish. But I'm not satisfied with where we are. We have a long way to go. So that's in a nutshell, some of my journey. Not all the details, obviously, because I'm not a young man, and I know I have a limited amount of time. So I'm going to move on to the next section. And the next section I wanted to talk about was, some of the lessons that we've learned, my wife and I, Chiquita, over, our journey in terms of raising young men. Now, our sons, we have 2 boys, Matari and Kamari. And, I'm not a social scientist by any stretch of the imagination, so I don't have all the answers, so don't rough me up too much. But, we basically broke it down into 3 areas. The first one was that, we believe that young men need structure. And so I'll tell you a story. My oldest son, when he went 5 years old, he threw him a nice little birthday party. He had all his buddies over, his cousins and whatnot. And he must have been about 5 years old. And it was really nice. On a Saturday afternoon, I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it was like over 20 years ago. And, everybody had a good time. So the next morning, I woke him up, and I woke him up at about 7:30 in the morning. And I introduced him to every single trash can in the house. And I said to him, this is the last time that dad has ever taken out the trash. This is your responsibility from now on. And the moral of the story is that you can't wait till these boys are, 14, 15 to start introducing them to chores. And it's not to say that it's ever too late, but the earlier you start, the better it is in terms of, having responsibilities. And they have to know what their boundaries are as well. My sons they knew that they were loved. We showed them a lot of love and affection, but we had a lot of structure in our house. And I'm not an expert on gangs, and I'm sure there's some people in the audience who probably know a lot more about gangs than I do. But there's no other entity that has more restrictions or more regulations and structure than a gang. If you don't do such and such a thing, there's absolute consequence to that. So I think sometimes when these boys join these gangs, they're looking for something that they're not getting at home. And so, you got to have the structure. And I think too many of us as parents, especially in those situations where we might not be together in terms of a husband and a wife, and I'm not, sitting here on a pedestal or anything like that, but we try to overcompensate. We try to overcompensate by showering them with material gifts when all they really want is your time. They just need to know that they're loved and they're respected. And the other thing that we did with our boys in terms of structure was, I made sure that my boys were bilingual. I wanted to make sure they knew the language of the streets and also the language of the boardroom, and that they can switch it up. So, we made sure they did a lot of sports as well, so that they were grounded and they, had a good sense of, how to behave and how to respond in certain situations. So it's been a journey, and we taught them about, respecting adults as well, and respecting people in authority. Because the youngest boy, I came home from work one day, and my wife had said to me, Chiquita, she said that the youngest, there had been an incident at the nursery. And I was like, an incident? What kind of incident? And he was already asleep, and it was only like 7:30. So I said, well, what are you talking about? So anyway, she explained to me that he had talked back to a teacher. So I woke him up, and I'm not going to tell you what I did to him, but because I can't say that on in this kind of forum. But I made sure that the next morning I marched him up to the school and made him apologize, and told him make this the first and the last time you ever talk back to a teacher or talk back to a coach. And when you're in their presence, they rule. Okay. And you're not going to get any support from us, in terms of anything different. So that was the first thing. Structure is really important in terms of bringing up these boys. The second thing that we showed our boys was to understand their history. I think when people don't know their history, they're lost. And our history as people of color is not just a history of the last 400 years. The last time I checked, I believe that civilization probably started in Africa. And we've got to stop teaching history from a Eurocentric point of view. We've got to teach history from a world-centric point of view, because you will find that every single continent, every single nation, not nation, but ethnic group has probably had a period of ascendancy on this planet. And we've got to figure out how to get along. And we have to learn that our history is not just a history of baggy pants. It's just not about that, right? So I think that levels the playing field to a certain extent in terms of self-pride. And I think self-pride is really, really critical. And I have no issues with people taking their kids to Disney World or Universal Studios. I think that's fine. I think it's freedom of choice. But take them to a museum once in a while, an interactive African-American museum where they can learn about their history and have an appreciation for the sacrifices that were made from people who came before them, to make sure that they got in a position where they can actually take the benefits. Because both of my sons, or our sons, actually went to Work Academy, and their maternal grandfather lived right across the street from Work Academy, but he couldn't go to Work Academy because it was segregated at the time. So, I basically told my sons, like, make sure you make it worth your while, and pay attention and do the best that you can. The other thing that I would suggest to people, which doesn't cost a lot of money, is, we all have choices. And one of the choices is, what kind of movies you watch. We made sure we watched a lot of movies with Black pride, and, whether it was the Tuskegee Airmen or the Great Debaters of Denzel Washington. And, these things help, and we would talk about them afterwards. Now, not everybody does that, but, it doesn't have to be a matter of, who has money and who doesn't have money, in terms of how and what type of things you invest in with your children to make sure that they have a better chance of being successful or, at least entering society. So the third thing that we did was we really tried to walk the walk and practice what we preach. Your kids are looking, your sons are looking at every single thing that you do, how you treat your women folk, how you treat your mom, how you treat your father and everything else. And, I would like to banish to the depths of the incinerator at Tides Bay, if we can get it working again, all those people who say, do as I say, as opposed to do as I do. I think it's just so critical, and it doesn't take a lot. Sometimes you have to be conscious about it. And my wife would remind me sometimes that, how I talk to her is how those boys are going to talk to their wives and their females, when they, get to that stage of their lives. And so, a lot of it's very, very conscious. And like I said, I don't have all the answers. All right. This is just my story and just what I want to share with you guys in terms of, why I feel so strongly about this transitional community services. I think it's an idea that's way overdue, and it's an idea that I believe has a lot of legs. And I'm just really excited about the vision and excited about being here today. So finally, I'm going to just talk to you guys a little bit about some of the takeaways, and in terms of what I would like to leave you guys with. First of all, resilience. What is the definition of resilience? From my perspective, resilience just means to bounce back, and it takes a village. We can't do it alone. We all have a role to play in this. The very survival of mankind hinges not on what we keep, but what we give. And it's in the giving that we not only live to see another day, but we live to survive to thrive on another day and celebrate another day. So, the stakes are very, very high. And, in a community like ours, where everything is interconnected, where a large part of what we do is contingent on political, economic, and social stability, we all have to play our part in making sure that, we're part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem. And, so, the fact that we've got so many donors on the call today, and, I don't know if some of the young men who are involved in the program are on the call today, but we need to stop telling our people what they cannot be. I have zero tolerance for dream killers and aspiration thieves. There's just no role for that in today's world. We need to tell these guys they can be anything they want to be with hard work, perseverance, and self-belief, and some assistance from the community, in terms of people giving them a hand up as opposed to a hand down. It's absolutely critical. And, and they've got to be prepared to, make the sacrifice, because, if you're not prepared to make the sacrifice for what you want, then what you want is going to be the sacrifice. So it's not easy. There's a lot of negativity out there, and people might have fallen on hard times. And, I know it's a challenging time right now, but I'm absolutely confident that we're going to get through this. We will get through this. It will look different when we get on the other side, but we will definitely get through it if we can continue to work together. Okay. And as Nelson Mandela once said, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we lived. It's the difference that we made in the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life that we have led. And that's something that is applicable to all of us. All of us want to be part of the solution, and all of us will have different skill sets that we can contribute in different ways. But this is not, a problem that's over there. It's not a problem that's over there. It's a problem it's an issue that impacts all of us. And when young men are trying to turn their lives around, we have a responsibility to step up and be counted, and, be our brother's keeper. And, make sure that we're sharing our skill sets with others to enhance their lives and give them a fighting chance to re-enter society and really, make a contribution. So what I want to challenge you guys, especially the young men, is I want to challenge you guys to strive for mastery of your skill sets. And I strongly challenge you not to strive just for competence, as that is expected, and not just for excellence, even though that's noble, but for mastery, where you acquire the skill sets that allow you to do your craft, whatever that craft is. I'm not talking about just, working with your hands. I'm talking about academically, whatever you decide to be, better than anyone else. There's an old saying that, most men are born different, but die as clones. Make a difference and make an impact. We are counting on you guys to reach your potential. I believe in you guys, and I believe in transitional community services, and I believe in Bermuda. So thank you. I'm not sure how much time I took, but anyway, that's my remarks for this evening. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. And I'm very excited about the prospects for this going forward.
Thank you so much, Patrick. You took all the time that you needed and you finished when you were done. So I definitely convey our thanks